Hello everybody, it's your boy Proftrof and we're back again with a new video. This is every psycho killer explained in 13 minutes. Why we're watching this? I have no idea. YouTube suggested it, looked interesting, so let's see it.
Zodiac Killer. The Zodiac Killer was a murderer who seemed to not only kill for the sake of it, but rather the media attention that would come with it. To him, at the end of the day, it was all just a game of...
It looks like two TDs and he's hiding between them.
Catch me if you can. He seemed to love the idea of this game between him and the police and enjoyed the fear he caused. He would send
why did he give the police a belly?
Detailed letters to the police and the media telling them information about the murderers that only the killer would know. He also added a sense of mockery to the police as he sent letters with secret codes saying they could show who he was if solved. The Zodiac's crimes began with the shooting of two teenagers in a lover's lane in Benicia in December 1968. Over the next year, he claimed several more victims, taunting authorities with messages.
Wait,
he would choose
years? Like, this is the scariest part. These dudes did not get caught in like a couple of days, a couple of weeks, or maybe months. They killed people for years, brother.
Couples in quiet places as victims and carefully planned these actions to make sure he got as much attention as possible to attract the police.
And they caught him?
Despite an intense investigation and hundreds of potential suspects, the Zodiac Killer only had DNA evidence pointing to different suspects, but he was never identified. His letters claimed he had killed as many as 37 people, though authorities could only link him to 5 confirmed murders. The Killer Clown.
Wait,
John Wayne Gacy
I've heard of this name, but
Pogo the Clown during local community events and charities.
He's probably dead,
private, he would go on to be the mass murderer who would go on to kill 33 young men in his home in Norwood Park Township, Illinois.
Oh, I think I've heard of this. I think he was like gay, right? Or he likes strangling them sometimes.
1972 and 1978, Gacy lured at least 33 young men and boys to his home after advertising jobs in public areas. Once they were inside, he would eventually strangling or suffocating them to death. His killing spree came to an end in 1978 when the police discovered a significant number of human remains buried in the crawl space of his home and the surrounding area.
Didn't he also live with his mother or something like that?
Went deeper as the investigation revealed that he had been carefully recording his crimes in journals and keeping mementos from his victims. All this had been a game to him, and it said that it brought him so much happiness. In 1980, Gacy was found guilty of 33 counts of murder and was sentenced to death. But even with the fact that his life was coming to an end, his final words were, "Kiss my A." Ted Bundy.
Jesus Christ. Imagine being the police officer that had to read his journals and write a report or something like that. I wouldn't want to have that job.
Like many serial killers, Ted Bundy was said to be a charming and charismatic guy, and Bundy would almost always use his charisma to gain the next victim's trust.
It's kind of decent.
Bundy was good at talking and seemed nice, which made people trust him. This was a trick to make it easier for him to find a victim. For almost 4 years, he would go on to commit over 30 murders, with no one suspecting anything because of how nice he was. And with this, between 1974 and 1978, Bundy went on a multi-state killing spree primarily targeting young women and girls. He would lure his victims by posing as an authority figure or pretending to need help, using things like pretending to be hurt and using crutches or a sling to manipulate victims into helping him. This not only made him seem less threatening, but also provided an opportunity to get them close to his vehicle, only to brutally and murder them. Bundy's killing methods were particularly gruesome, as he often revisited the crime scenes to engage in acts of necrophilia.
What?
Worse is that he would...
What? Why? Jesus Christ, brother. I mean, Jesus ain't got nothing to do there.
Decapitate at least 12 of his victims and keep their severed heads to remember them. Even though he would...
Yeah, we don't want to know what he did with those.
Do these murders
those were probably toys for him.
Bundy was able to evade capture for years due to his ability to blend in with society. When he was a mass murderer, he outwardly seemed like a regular guy.
I think
he dated
women. I think I've seen his actual pictures and he's like a little bit short. He's not that handsome. It's weird.
Had a
Must have been
job
crazy
and
upper.
wasn't socially awkward. During his eventual trial in Florida, Bundy became his own lawyer and attempted to portray himself as a victim of pornography and dysfunctional family life. However, the evidence against him was overwhelming, and he was eventually convicted and sentenced to death. Milwaukee Cannibal.
Milwaukee?
From necrophilia, cannibalism, and permanent preservation of body parts from his victims, Jeffrey Dahmer nearly got away with it all.
I've heard about Jeffrey Dahmer.
All had it not been for one victim who managed to get away. Jeffrey Dahmer would usually lure men, primarily young African-American men and boys, back to his apartment, where he would put drugs in their drinks, and afterward, he would do what he pleased with them. After killing his victims, he would dismember their bodies and keep various...
First kill or first... Does it matter? Probably not, but... Yeah.
Body parts such as skulls, hands, and genitalia with him, even eating some of the body parts. He tried different experiments on some victims, hoping it would put them in a sort of zombie-like state by using a drill and harmful chemicals, thinking this would make them stay forever. In total, Dahmer was convicted of killing 15 men and boys, although he confessed to additional murders. Perhaps the worst part is that the number might have been lower, as one of his victims, who was an underage boy from Laos, managed to escape his house, even though Dahmer had drilled a hole in his head. Still, the police returned to Dahmer's house as Jeffrey would lie that he was his drunk boyfriend. Dahmer was eventually caught in 1991 and sentenced to life in prison.
Bro, when he said all that, I thought it was gonna be like 1920. Like the amount of stupidity. 1991, this was like a while back. What?
But would later die after an inmate beat him to death.
Oh
Jack
no.
the Ripper.
Okay,
everybody
knows about this.
5 throats cut with almost surgeon-like precision. Jack the Ripper's death toll wasn't as high per se as other serial killers, but he did do one thing the others couldn't. He got away. The murders took place in the poor Whitechapel district of London in 1888, where the victims were
this dude got away, right? The Zodiac?
Prostitutes who he most likely paid for their services, but unknown to them, they had been paid to die. Unlike these days, where killings like these would be everywhere on either social media or the news, in the 19th century, everyone had to rely on the newspaper or rumors going around, which made everything all the much worse. The newspapers would talk about how the Ripper would remove the internal organs of his victims, carefully keeping everything intact. At the time, education on things like human anatomy was only reserved for the richest in society, meaning the public thought they had not only a murderer, but one who was bright and possibly quite rich. And in 1888, after the first body was discovered, more kept coming. You can imagine the terror everyone was in at the time. Rumors going about that he could be a vampire who drank the victim's blood, or that he was a sort of vengeful spirit killing the immoral people in society. With most of the victims being...
Yeah, considering he's killing prostitutes, I can imagine people thinking that.
Poor prostitutes who were forced into that life to make ends meet, most of the authorities at the time thought they had it coming and barely protected them. But even despite the intensive investigation at the time and the numerous suspects proposed throughout the years, Jack the Ripper's identity remains one of the biggest mysteries to this day. Charles Manson. Manson was essentially a cult leader who formed a commune known as the Manson family in the late 1960s, which attracted a devoted group of followers, mostly young women, with his ideologies and charismatic personality. He preached a darker philosophy that involved starting a race war he called Helter Skelter, with the plan being to commit murders against celebrities and blame it on particular black gangs. In August 1969, under Manson's orders, members of his cult murdered pregnant actress Sharon Tate, along with 4 others at her home in Los Angeles. The following night, they killed couple Leno and Rosemary LaBianca in their home, leaving messages written in blood at both crime scenes that read, "Death to pigs." Pigs referring to the police officers to make it seem that this was committed by gangs instead. You see, Manson didn't even physically commit the murders himself, but instead manipulated his followers into carrying out the acts for him. Manson was convicted of conspiracy to commit murder and received the death penalty, which was later changed to life in prison.
Why?
The Butcher of Plainsfield.
Plainsfield.
Ed Gain lived an isolated life with his harsh mother on their family farm in the small town of Plainsfield, Wisconsin. After his mother died in 1945, Gain's already fragile mental state deteriorated further, leading him down a dark path of necrophilia, grave robbery, and finally,
this is like a Chainsaw Massacre type of thing?
Murder. In 1957, when local authorities investigating a local woman's disappearance had to search his property, the quiet farmer's house turned out to be among the worst things in murder history. Gain had made household items and clothing from human skin and body parts, including skulls used as bowls and human skin furniture. Further,
bro is playing Rimworld IRL.
Our investigation revealed that Gain had removed numerous corpses from local graveyards, collecting body parts and preserving them in a bizarre obsession with his dead mother. His obsession eventually led to the murder of 2 women whose bodies were found mutilated and dismembered on his property. Gain was eventually diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia and ruled legally insane. However, his crimes were still so disturbing that, to the point where the horror films Psycho and the Texas Chainsaw Massacre were made from this insane story.
I guess that.
The Night Stalker.
Wait, he didn't say what they did with him. What did they do with him? He's not out there, is he? Right? He's not out there. He's in prison, right? He killed people.
June 1984, a series of murders would be committed in the form of home invasions and murder.
Okay. By the way, I read about a serial killer somewhere in Africa that killed like 100+ boys, and they released him after 13 years or 15 years. I think it was in Africa, because the max sentence in the country was like 15 years, I think. The numbers are probably wrong, but the story is kind of right. I hope it's wrong, because that's crazy shit.
A series of murders would be committed in the form of home invasions and murders across California. The murder methods were particularly evil, as he would break into homes late at night, brutalize his victims with beatings and assaults, and often commit satanic rituals before murdering them. The police were possibly dealing
Can we get a description of what exactly a satanic ritual is?
with a lunatic who was looking for his victims every night. He was known to leave satanic symbols at the crime scenes, leading to his Night Stalker name. His crimes weren't just murders, but extreme violence, sadism, and a seeming lack of remorse or empathy for his victims. In some of the victims' bodies, it was seen that they had been involved in prolonged acts of torture against their victims. He would inflict a lot of physical pain and psychological torment. It was pretty clear that the killer simply enjoyed torture. The hunt for the Night Stalker became one of the largest manhunts in California history, with over 200
California's kind of fucked up, isn't it?
Detectives working the case. In August 1985, the killer was recognized and beaten by a group of residents in East Los Angeles before being arrested. And with that, Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker, had been caught. During his trial, Ramirez embraced his Night Stalker persona, often flashing a pentagram to the cameras and taunting the families of his victims. What is even more insane is that during Richard Ramirez's trial in 1989, one of the jurors, Phyllis Singletary, unexpectedly passed away. Singletary was found dead in her apartment. Her death was attributed to a lethal combination of alcohol and prescription drugs, specifically Valium and the painkiller codeine. Singletary's death occurred during the penalty phase of Ramirez's trial, and because of this, a lot of the people at the time thought Ramirez had caused the death. He was eventually convicted of 13 counts of murder, 5 attempted murders, 11 and 14 burglaries.
Wow.
The Rostov Ripper.
God damn, bruh.
Partially due to the incompetence of the investigators and the lack of modern forensic techniques at the time, the Rostov Ripper would go on to murder and at least 53 women and children in the Russian towns of Rostov, Shakhty, and Novocherkassk between 1973 and 1990. His victims'
brother has been active on the rapé scene longer than most people have been alive.
Ranged from 7 to 36, and he would often engage in acts of necrophilia and cannibalism after the killings. Andrei Chikatilo preyed upon vulnerable individuals by exploiting their trust or desperation. He would often approach his victims in public places, such as
how did he do that with that haircut, though? I need him to teach me some things. after I say that, and not like that, just like charisma, maybe. Maybe not do the whole rapé thing and killing thing, just do a charisma book. Okay, let's forget that happened.
Or train stations, markets, or parks, offering them money, food, or assistance. He presented himself as a friendly and helpful figure, gaining the confidence of his victims before leading them to isolated locations where he could carry out his heinous acts without interruption. Chikatilo would also promise financial assistance or aid to women who were struggling financially or in need of assistance. In fact, the Soviet Union during the 1980s was bad to live. The victims were desperate. He would do this before subjecting them to acts of violence, including and even biting off their tongues and other body parts. Despite an investigation by Soviet authorities, Chikatilo remained at large for over a decade. His killing spree finally came to an end in 1990 when he was arrested after a routine document check revealed his connection to the murders. During his trial, Chikatilo confessed to the murders and described in chilling detail the pleasure he derived from the acts of violence and mutilation. He was eventually found guilty of 52 murders and sentenced to death by firing squad in 1994.
By firing squad. Oh, right. Wow. That was wow. That was an interesting video. I hope you enjoyed it, but not too much maybe. And I'll see y'all next time, okay? Jesus.